They hired an AI agency and lost $80,000, ending up with nothing at the end of it. AI agencies and AI implementation partners and consultants are popping up everywhere, but this means there's more garbage than ever. Part of the reason that we wanted to make this episode is so you know how to vet those AI agencies to tell the BS from real partners that you can trust.
Their range of proposals was between $280,000 and $20,000. Well, the truth of the matter is the only thing that happened was MIT came out with that paper that said 95% of agencies are failing their enterprise clients and you shouldn't be hiring agencies.
Talk to me about those projects where if I see 200,000, I shouldn't be too surprised by it.
Underlying technologies that need to happen when you start getting into multiplayer. OpenAI is a fantastic model when used at the enterprise level because its reasoning model is so good. It's been around for a while. The APIs are phenomenal. If you ask a $20,000 agent, can I hold you to that number? I guarantee you they will say no.
Andrew, what are some of the signs that people should start looking for when they're selecting an AI implementation partner?
Yeah, we have been through a lot here in the last few years because we have been doing AI for 10 years. And those AI agencies that we're used to seeing in the marketplace are no longer competitive proposals against us because there's just so many other AI agency players in the space. So whenever we are bidding for enterprise work, whether it's with a giant company, a public company, or even doing mid-market stuff, we're starting to hear these other agencies that we've never heard of before in competition with us. We had one proposal in October. We're still talking to them to try to close that. Their range of proposals was between $280,000 and $20,000. So from the client standpoint, you're looking at that like, I gave the same RFP to 10 different people. Though that RFP was digested, consumed, understood by engineers, which I thought were engineers, and then presented back to me to close this project as someone I could pick. And I'm seeing a $280,000 price tag and a $20,000 price tag. That is bonkers. Like that means either someone doesn't understand it, someone's trying to cheapen the market, or the $280,000 person is just way too expensive. And so we've been through these waves. You know, as agency owners, I'm friends with a lot of other agency owners. We wondered, was it the market? Are we too expensive now? Did vibe coding really decrease the pricing? Did these other AI agencies that are up and coming, are they going to kind of usurp us? Are they going to replace us because people are using these vibe coded things and they don't need real development? Well, the truth of the matter is the only thing that happened was MIT came out with that paper that said 95% of agencies are failing their enterprise clients and you shouldn't be hiring agencies. That was really the only reason. We have been part of that 5% for the last 10 years. What I mean by that is 24 out of the 27 projects we've delivered have been on time and on budget, and they've returned more ROI than what the client has paid us to build that project. And that's like a slot machine. You put a $2 into a slot machine, you get $4 out. You would do that over and over and over again. Things to watch out for are people that don't understand that ROI or doing a discovery phase, we call it rapid validation sprint, or investigating the client and listening to them and saying, I've heard you. We just had a client tell me, after 5 other agencies, you're the only person that listened to what I said, wrote that down in the proposal, and used my words in the proposal itself, which also means people are just using AI to write all these proposals. They're not even listening to the specific clients because they have these generic proposal drops they think are going to be spray and pray and work out. But I think that aspect of it is it's truly understanding what the problem is and then saying, cool, we've built something similar before. We don't know your business, but let's learn together in the first week, the first 2 weeks, the first 4 weeks, whatever that process is for discovery. That is the most important thing you should be looking for because it is impossible to hire anyone from the outside world, drop them into your business and have them work and produce money for you. It will never work. We've all hired horrible salespeople. We've all hired horrible product managers or project managers. It never works out if you don't have a system, a process, and an explanation of what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it. When you tell them that, and then you hire A players, you'll get A+ results. When you hire horrible people and then tell them, bring your processes from the other companies and then use it at my company, and then let's see if it works, that's where you fail. And we think that agencies are just this magical potion that's going to succeed. Well, no, they're the same thing. They can't just bring what they've learned from a bunch of other people and put it on your project. They have to listen. They have to hear what your problem is. They have to hear what your challenges are and then implement those according to what they used as their best practice with the best tools they have in their tool belt. So that's the first thing you should be looking for.
I hear 2 things. One, the top-down approach. So actually listening to you. I got on a sales call recently with someone trying to sell me, and the first thing they did was talk for half an hour. I sat there and they're like, any questions? I'm like, no, because I know we're not hiring you. You don't even know my business. So someone actually listens and understands and then tries to show you what they're going to do, how long it's going to take, and what that benefit will be to you in your language rather than a templatized AI generated thing. And then the other thing you mentioned is this full transparency development. We talked about this a little bit before, but people pay and then they just hope. You said it, spray and pray. They're like lowering their standards for AI hiring that they wouldn't have on anything else. They're like, okay, hopefully this AI thing fixes my business. And then they get back nothing over and over again.
Yeah, I was sitting next to an agency owner. We were at a workshop and the two of us are sitting there and he's like, oh, we just won a project. And so I look it over his phone and he's kind of looking at it. I'm like, what's it for? And he's like, I got no idea. We sent about 10 of these proposals out last week. It looks like somebody said yes. And in my mind, I'm like, how is this client that's hoping to trust you to solve some problem that they've never solved before, and you don't even know what the challenge is? You don't even know what the problem is. You don't know what they're feeling. You don't know what like experience they need to solve for. And that's coming from the CEO that's just looking at that. For us, you talk to 7 people before we even send you a proposal. You talk to an engineer, you talk to a product manager, you talk to the CEO or a CTO, you talk to marketing, like you talk to enough people that we all then come together and say, from the 150 to 200 projects we built in the last 10 years, what are the things we can pull to put into this proposal that will help them? And then what are the business models that they have that we can match to? So by the time they say yes, I'm already like fully thought of their business model, fully thought of how much money they're getting back, fully thought of how we're going to build it, fully thought of like what engineer is really good for them to work on this and how we're going to position that engineer to like get onto that project if they're currently on another project and that project needs to end. All of those things are going through my head. So when I get that email that like, we got a yes, I'm like, cool. I love building that thing and I know exactly how we're going to solve it for you. And I can't wait to show you in July 13th, because I know the estimate of when we're going to release this thing. All of that's done. So it's just, you have to listen and you have to learn what's needed.
And it sounds like these aren't things that you should just hire us for. We're giving you guys the recipe of things you should be looking for. 923 isn't the only reputable AI implementation partner. We have others. But you should be looking for these commonalities. Something else you said is, we've done this before. I've looked at the site recently and they had these case studies, but none of them said a client, none of them said who it was. It was probably just AI generated. That was my thought. So getting real references. I know, Andrew, you said sometimes people ask for actual references, like people. I want to talk to someone. So we actually give references of clients, past clients who say, hey, yeah, I can vouch for 923.
Yeah. I personally don't like that as much because it's like you're not trusting the person right away. And I get it. Like, you're getting a lot of lies fed to you, but I feel really bad for the people they have to call. You know, they're running their business. They already got the results. It's been a year or 2 since they've talked to us. And then they get an email from me being like, hey, I got some random person that wants to talk to you about the experience with us. And it always goes great. Like, we get great recommendations. We're going to win a project down in Virginia for the same thing. And she called all 3 of our clients and she's like, oh, they said great things about you. And I'm like, of course they did. Like, I could have told you they said that, right? But it's just it's a human habit that I think we get in. I think what's more important, what I would do if I was to hire an agency, is ask that question, get the referrals, and then not call. Just by the agency giving up the names of the people that are willing to talk to them, you've given the trust over to the client and said, you know, I believe in you so much. I trust you to call these people and talk to them. I'm not going to give you people that are going to say negative things about me. So with that in mind, like, once you get the clients, I don't think you have to follow through with the actual phone call. I think it's just enough to get, you know, permission to call.
You do a lot of those things where you're like, I'm just kind of testing this person or I'm testing this agency to see if they're going to give me the answer.
Maybe that's
awesome.
my style. But I know the people that I refer them to, it's like they're in the middle of their day doing their thing with their company. They're just like, I do it, but.
Yeah. And now something else you mentioned was this gap in price. Same project, 20,000, like, okay. 200,000. Now, it sounds like something you should keep in mind is single player versus multiplayer as someone who's selecting a solution. Can you talk me through how I should know those pricing differences?
We've correlated the single player and multiplayer thing in the last 6 months because we needed to vocalize what our clients were experiencing when they saw 2 different proposals at such a massive range. Proposals are intended to be a reflection of what the product is going to be built. And if you're trying to build, let's say, a time tracker or an invoice reviewer, something simple that we can all understand, it is very easy to say, I can vibe code this for a period of time to get you a solution that'll work for, you know, the 100 invoices that you gave me. And it looks very appealing because that invoice is so low. And then you say, great, I know this is an MVP and I can build upon that. What happens is, you're part of a project right now. It was a $50,000 quote. They're $350,000 in because the edge cases became so massive that each feature became a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. It wasn't fully planned out. And so as the clients and customers started testing it, more development needed to happen. The reverse of that is like, just like when you build a house. If you plan the architecture, you know where the bathrooms are, you know where the plumbing is, you know the electricians, and you get approvals for all of that prior to starting to build the house, you never have to rip anything down. You don't have to like build a room and realize, well, the plumbing has to go through the middle of the kitchen. Well, great, let's move the kitchen, right? Like that's already planned out. So you're never reverse engineering. Me personally, I'm a trial and error guy. I'm a horrible vibe coder because I'm like, build this thing in one prompt and then let me type for hours trying to figure out how to fix all the edge cases that I thought of while I saw the one prompt not work. The best way to do it is how anti-gravity does it. You get a prompt, you get an idea, you build that, you plan it, you get the structure, you spend like 80% of your time typing of how the architecture is going to work and how the plan is going to look and how the different edge cases are going to be resolved. And then anti-gravity comes back to you and it's like, you shouldn't do 200 word limits. You should do 50 word limits because most people do it that way. Otherwise you're like blocking too much. And you're like, cool, I never thought of that. And then you hit submit. And then the last 20% is coding. That's how estimates and that's how projects should go. And you should think of that like building a house when you're going to an agency. So when you're getting a price range of $20,000 to $200,000, one company has thought of the architectural, the system, and they're saying it's about this number. And you can ask them, can I hold you to that number? Can it not go over that number? For all these features that I put there, can we not go over that number? And if they say yes, they've done it before, they're confident, and they have the experience to know that that work is consistent in there. If you ask a $20,000 agent, can I hold you to that number? I guarantee you they will say no. They will say no because their business model does not succumb to that type of structure. They cannot do fixed price because they know every project they do ends up being $50,000, $80,000, $100,000. You need to find the agencies where there's a top limit and the structure of what you generally need to go live is predicted and featureized. So you can actually get to that number and say, cool, I launched this, it works. I didn't pay $1 over than what they estimated.
So those projects that are at the further end of cheaper are going to be those single player. You talk about invoice generation, SOW generation, these types of things. But now talk to me about those projects where if I see 200,000, I shouldn't be too surprised by it.
Yeah, there's underlying technologies that need to happen when you start getting into multiplayer? It's a really great question, Nishan, because a single player solution for a CEO isn't that hard to code because the edge cases are just resolved when the CEO finds the problem. When you have a multiplayer problem, meaning that you have employees that are asking the same questions, you have maybe investors, maybe you have customers, all in the same knowledge base asking general questions about your company, you automatically have to deal with user permissions. Who has access to what data? How are those user permissions going to be restricted for person A with question 1 and person B with question 2? Maybe the questions are the same or very close to identical, but one person has access and the other one doesn't. That is really hard to start controlling. Now, the AI systems 2 years ago, we had to custom code all of this. We had to put in the meta description how the user permissions were handled. But in the last year, a lot of Microsoft's ecosystem and Google's ecosystem, every time you vectorize a document, gets stored with the metadata of who has user permissions for that. So while the foundational models and the big giant companies that are controlling are some of those permissions, it does get easier, but you still need an agency to map that and figure out exactly when something changes, how it's going to interfere with another employee. Now, the other thing that becomes very important when you go multiplayer is not just access, but tone and voice. How do you control consistency across questions and prompts where people are horrible at prompting and getting same and similar answers to somebody that's really good at prompting? And so you need to create those systems in place so that like Jill, that's been there for 20 years, is getting the same answers because she knows how to ask the question, where Susie, 6 months in, needs to get that same answer with a horrible question, but needs to get somewhat in the ballpark. And you need to understand that. You need to understand the question and the knowledge and what needs to surface. And so that's when you get into recency versus bias versus redundancy, like all of those terminologies that happen when you search something and how you rank it and how you return it really starts to matter.
If you're someone who knows that I don't need a single player solution that is just for me, I'm at the point where my company, my team needs a solution for our business that we can rely on. Then use the first link in the description to reach out and tell us a little bit about what you're interested in, whether you're at the phase of having an exact project or looking for help finding what that could be. Now, talk about distractions and not starting with strategy. OpenAI, they actually had a strategy, it seems like, now that they're rolling out ads. What do you think? You think there was a longer play leading up to this moment?
Yeah. The reason why this is important for this conversation is you have models to choose from. And we do get people that come to us that are using a bunch of single player ChatGPT instances. And they're asking us, can we move this into a more enterprise type solution? And so we're starting to realize OpenAI is a fantastic model when used at the enterprise level because its reasoning model is so good. It's been around for a while. The APIs are phenomenal. And it's just very robust. It's very predictable when we use it the way we do. The front end, where people are using ChatGPT is consumer grade. And when you have a consumer grade product, you have the same problem we had 10 years ago when people were bringing their laptops to work. They were using a Chrome browser, which was better than any Edge browser at the time. They were using tools on their Chrome browser and extensions that made their life easier. And they would bring that laptop to work and say, this is a better way for me to work than the stupid Dell machine you gave me that's restrictive and I can't even log into anything. We had to, as companies, start adjusting to the technology that was at home that was better than the technology at work. We're experiencing that again with ChatGPT. The ChatGPT that is at home is better than the ChatGPT that's provided with you at work. So what do people do? They copy paste information out of work into their personal ChatGPT, do the thing they need to do, and return it back to their work environment. Enterprises need to realize that that's happening, and they need to start providing the tools at work that are sufficient for them to use. Now, spiraling back into ChatGPT, they're also realizing this. Claude Code's gotten really good at enterprise. They're trying to tackle Microsoft. They're trying to do internal file systems. Who uses internal file systems at home? Nobody, right? All of us use that at work. I don't have much stored on files at home. The next thing that is happening is you're getting Gemini getting really good at their Google admin and Google Workspace and Google Drive and all that. So the Google Workspace is going to be covered because you just transition right into it. If you're on a Microsoft, you have the option to use Claude or Google or Microsoft Copilot, which is the OpenAI enterprise version. What you do not have the option anymore to do is compile a bunch of ChatGPTs and bring them together in the enterprise mode. You can, of course, they have enterprise, people are doing it, but it is very difficult to do that and then rely on the OpenAI infrastructure to be as competitive with all the tools Microsoft is rolling out to keep multiplayer secure, to keep multiplayer user permissions intact. They're rolling out a lot of tools to help IT infrastructure make it easier. You could duplicate that all on OpenAI, of course. It's just going to take time and you have to wait for them to release it. But what products are OpenAI releasing? Consumer grade TikTok, consumer facing ad model, consumer facing chat bot that's like Slack, consumer facing social media platform. And it seems like they had the idea that if we need to recapture some sort of revenue, we need to have an infrastructure in place of how people are using products from the consumer level. We need to train our models on the data that what gets people addicted to using ChatGPT. Scrolling videos, typing chat, typing text messages, and doing all that. The only reason you do that is when you offer ads to people that are going to be purchasing in that interaction, in that flow, and in that concept of how they're using their daily life. So if they're using ChatGPT to search for stuff for products, what is the process that you can interject an ad to purchase a product that the advertiser is going to be very happy to pay that money? You only get that from training on videos and data that how the consumers are using your product, not the enterprise. And I think it's very obvious at this point, ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're going after the consumer side, and Claude and Gemini are going after the enterprise side. Google's big enough. They also are going after the voice model side, so they'll be fine in the personal space as well. But I think ChatGPT, they're just not big enough, and they don't have enough engineers and enough time to do both. And so they picked one, and I think they picked the consumer.
Wow. It makes sense. Even my friend, he was telling me about ChatGPT Atlas, and he's like, I love it. It does this, it does that. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's all consumer targeting data that's going to get fed to the companies, which, I mean, honestly, that's how Meta, all these other YouTube, it's a model we're all used to.
We are. And they're good at it. It's funny that Atlas is the breeding ground, because once you go in the browser and you get enough users in the browser, you get access to all the sites they visit. So that's the best place to learn for ads.
Yeah, it's a advertiser's dream come true. You thought Meta was good. Imagine like their deepest, darkest secrets in a prompt. It's insane. So if you want to know about news like this, then you should get on our newsletter, the AI newsletter Worth Reading, where we don't just speak about random news. We look at it from the perspective of how you can get ROI. Andrew, thanks for another great episode.
Thanks so much, Nishan. Have a great afternoon, everyone.